Welcome back once again to the PokerMedia Australia podcast. Great to have you back here, as always, with myself, PokerMedia Australia Managing Editor Ben Blaschke, and Landon. As always, great to see you. How are you going?
Very well, thanks, mate. I tell you what, I'm literally shaking in my boots right now. We are in the presence of poker royalty. Joining us all the way from the US&A is none other than the founder of the Poker Tournament Directors Association and TD extraordinaire, Matt Savage. Matt, great to have you on the show with us.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate having me on.
Matt, first of all, we should ask you how your health is. I know you had a bit of a health scare last year. How's everything going?
Yeah, everything's okay. You know, I ended up using a CPAP machine, so I'm using that. But I've had a little bit of a scare because, you know, I was having trouble breathing late last year, and it really hasn't gone away. But I'm managing it. Still able to do all the things that normally do, but occasionally, from time to time, I get a little short of breath, and I think it might be allergies. I've never really had allergies before, but I'm thinking that may be what it is, since I did have that antibody test and did turn up negative. So hopefully I didn't have COVID, but I was in one of those positions where I wasn't sure if I wanted to have it or not have it. So I am, I'm one of those guys that's kind of in the middle. I'm not really sure, if you want to have had it and got over it, or you want to avoid it and never have it. So it's one of those positions, but I'm feeling better. Again, I'm doing a lot of exercise here at home while I'm home. So trying to stay in better shape, and hopefully that's helping with the breathing as well.
Of course, COVID is what's dominating our lives at the moment, and it certainly had a massive impact on the poker world as well as every other aspect of society at the moment. How are you sort of dealing with this whole shutdown? Obviously, poker is starting to come back in some areas, but not in the way it was before. How are you sort of dealing with what we've been seeing?
I'm, for the most part, trying to work with the people that are friends of mine that are program directors, TDs, and people around the industry to try and see what we can do to open up safely. That's been my main focus, along with the online services of what things we're doing with Club WPT. There's a bounty series that we do every week, and me and Tony Dunst and Vince Van Patten and the Australian Hall of Famer Lynn Gilmartin do as well. We do that every week. So really trying to get Club WPT humming along, and subscriptions are way up, obviously, since we've gone back to being just basically online. In addition to that, I've been working with Party Poker and our crew over in Europe to get our online services together with them. And we have a big series that just happened. Our biggest WPT ever was just taking place on Party Poker. And we're looking forward to a huge summer series as well. We feel like it could be one of the biggest series ever online, and one of the biggest series ever for that matter.
For our viewers that may not know Matt, I'm sure most of them are well aware of who you are, Matt, and I'm sure you've dealt with a lot of them as well over the years. But of course, Matt is Executive Tour Director of the World Poker Tour, has had a long-standing relationship, of course, with the WPT, former Tournament Director of the WSOP, I think still TD of Bay 101, Commerce and Thunder Valley, Matt. So
yeah,
wearing many hats these days, of course.
Yeah, definitely a lot of things. Obviously my job has changed. I'm not out there doing live tournaments there lately, so I needed to, focus on some of the things we do with the WPT online. But yeah, I miss it. Looking forward to getting back to doing some live tournaments, hopefully in the near future. We'll see.
I wanted to ask you, Matt, obviously you've had so many accomplishments. You've achieved so much within the poker industry over the course of goodness knows how many years. But I'd like to sort of get to know, in a nutshell, what Matt Savage was like before poker.
Before that, I was kind of doing a lot of different jobs. I've been working my entire life since I was 14 years old. I've never had a month off, completely off of work. So I have been working, doing different jobs. I was, attempting to be a professional bowler at one time. I worked in baseball card shops. I was very big in the memorabilia business. I was a alarm service technician. And that's about the time I started going to poker rooms and playing in small limit games in the San Jose Bay Area. And, that's kind of how I saw that people that were working in that industry were making more money than I was making as a service technician for an alarm company. So that's how I kind of made the move.
What was your inspiration into getting into the adjudication and the management of tournament poker?
Basically, I was a poker dealer. I loved being a poker dealer, but I burned myself out. I was always working overtime, and I ended up getting carpal tunnel. And because of that, I ended up having to go on the floor. Then the place where I was working at the time, Bay 101 Casino, where I still work today, had a tournament director that went on vacation. I had already just started running my own golf tournament at that time, so I stepped in and filled in for him as a poker tournament director, and really loved it. And so when another local casino opened up about an hour north in just south of San Francisco, I took the tournament director job up there. So I made that move, went up to Lucky Chances Casino, and ended up working there for 3 or 4 years as well. So that's kind of how I got into that side of it. But the real story is, that I was still playing tournament poker, and everywhere I went, the rules were different. So I thought it was a real effort for me to try and get the rules standardized. And so I went to Vegas for the very first time. I walked into the World Series of Poker in 2001 and went up to their TD and said, let's try and get something done where we can standardize rules for everybody. And I kind of got a little bit of a laugh at, like, who's this guy? We've tried this before. It's never worked. And luckily, I was good friends with Linda Johnson, and she had an industry conference that we tacked on the first TDA summit in 2001, a long time ago. And we had 24 people from around the country, the United States, and one international person that came in. And that's how the TDA was born. And out of that, I got invited to run the World Series of Poker the following year in 2002.
How long did it take to, from having that idea that, maybe you need standardized rules around the globe to really making that basically a reality?
Yeah, it kind of took place, that year we kind of grew from, like I said, 24 people the first year to about 60 the next. And then it kind of grew out of that. And then people were coming to us, people were saying, we want to be a part of the TDA, because what the TDA does is it makes it easier for us. It gives us some kind of backing when somebody comes to us and says, why did you make that ruling on me? And they say, well, it's the TDA rule. So the basis of it is that we really want all the rules to be standard. And, we figure that even if you don't agree with it, if you can live with it and it can make it standard, it's better for the players. And that's all the TDAs ever wanted to do, was make things standard so that the players, when they go from casino to casino and property to property, they will see that the rules are the same. So I think that was the most important part of the TDA, and that's how it's grown to what it is today. I think just about every major tournament uses TDA rules, and it's used worldwide. So we're really proud of what we've done. We have a summit every other year, and get about 200 people from around the world coming in and telling us what they see or new ideas and things like that. And we really appreciate all the input from the players, the media, the poker managers, and the TDs from around the country, around the world, that make the TDA what it is today.
What's the process, Matt, when there's an idea for a rule that may need some tweaking, or something that somebody's come up with that might look like a good idea? What's the process for, I guess, discussing that and then eventually implementing it if that's the way you decide to go?
Basically, somebody will maybe come up with an idea. Let's say use big blind ante, for example, which just happened last the TDA summit. And the idea is out there, and some people are using it. Some people like it. I try it, institute it in the tournaments, the commerce. Not only did the professional players like it, but the amateur players liked it as well. It seemed to speed up, so we're getting more hands out. And so I bring it to the TDA summit, and I say, okay, here's this idea of the big blind ante. What do you guys think? Should we do, ante first or big blind first, or should we use button ante or big blind ante or whatever? And so we get everybody in the room that's doing all these different things, and then we try and see if we can get everybody on the same page. So I really push for big blind ante over button ante. And so those people in the room, it was about maybe 10 to 15% that were still using button ante. We asked them, can you live with going to big blind ante so it's the same for everybody? A few hands say they really don't want to change. So then we it's kind of like a jury. We kind of try and push them over the edge so that everybody's doing the same thing. And then in the end, we get, every person in the room to agree that we're going to use the same format for big blind ante the following year. And, that's how it kind of works. Like, even if you don't agree, if you were one of those people that really was strongly on button ante, you should know that it's better for all the players if it's the same everywhere you go. And so that's kind of how we got it to move forward and have got people to do it. So that's kind of how we do the same thing with rules. A lot of the rules over the years I've suggested, and we've kind of worked on them, tweaked them, and tried to make sure that, they were fair for every player and for, every buy-in level. We at the TDA don't really care if it's a $100,000 buy-in or a weekly $20 buy-in. We want the rules the same for everybody because, in reality, we want those $20 players to try to become that $100,000 player at some point. So why should they not be treated the same? And, it's been a basis of my career that we treat all players the same. And, it doesn't matter, again, if they're the highest high roller or a daily tournament player that, buys in for $20. We want everybody to be treated the same.
My question to you, Matt, in your opinion, and I'm sure there's probably many, what would have been the biggest challenge in terms of implementing a new rule or changing a rule that you've come across over the years?
I just think it has more to do with the World Series. A lot of times if the World Series is doing something one way and they don't want to change the rule, I think we've had this issue from time to time, yet everybody else wants to, it becomes a sticking point, right? People want to do what the World Series does. People want to do what the World Poker Tour does. So if we can't get the rule into place that, everybody's using or the WSOP's using, then basically it doesn't become a rule. And so there's been some things over the years that have been problematic that I feel strongly about and others in the room felt strongly about, but also, the WSOP felt strongly about it in the meantime. So it's one of those things. And, we even had a couple in the last one with, does the ante go first or the big blind go first when somebody's all in or short? So it creates a little bit of a problem. And, again, we want everybody to be playing by the same rules. So sometimes it just doesn't work out and we don't get to have the unanimous decision that we want. And if that's the case, it just doesn't become a TDA rule.
Is there a rule or rules, Matt, over the years that you've implemented that you think has, had a long-lasting and quite important impact on poker?
One of the things is what you guys call repecharge,
Mm-hmm.
which I've never heard of before, but we call reentry. I think it's had an impact on poker, and I think it's actually been a negative one. So, I was very strong in popularizing that in the United States and in a lot of different places, and even was working with the online sites when they started it back online. And it's one of those things that it's not really, in my opinion, 100% fair for everybody. So while I was very important in standardizing that or getting that out there, I still think it's created probably a negative impact overall on the poker world. Now, remember, poker tournaments in the meantime long ago were created to get people to play in your casino or play cash games. And, one of the things that I think reentry has hurt is the cash games. I feel like it's also hurt satellites and things like that. So, a lot of people that will come in early in a series will blow all their money in a single tournament or two and not have enough to play the other tournaments or the other satellites or the other cash games that, make tournaments what they were supposed to be. So I think, that's probably been one of the things that I've been strongest about as of late. But at the same time, I understand that, it's a business too. So people are trying to make money from tournaments as they were trying to make them from cash games. So I think that reentry is here to stay. And I think we're just going to have to deal with it. I'm a guy that believes that no reentry or a single reentry is probably the better for the future of the game. But at this point, I think the cat's out of the bag.
Matt, one of the reasons you first introduced that is because of, always trying to innovate and find new ideas. And I guess there's no better time than right now. We're probably going to have to innovate as an industry. Just looking around at what you're seeing at the moment, a couple of poker rooms in the US have just reopened and but not reopened back in Australia at the moment, but it's probably not too far off. What are you expecting us to see over the next few months in terms of, shorthanded play? And what are your thoughts on what you've seen so far?
First of all, I think the tournaments are going to come much later. I think it's going to be cash games first. I don't think you're going to see any major series until the fall, which, the WSOP is supposed to start there. And I really hope that it goes because, I think that if they're able to come back and they feel like it's safe and, things are flattening out, as they say, and the World Series is able to run in the fall as they're scheduled right now, I think that's a good step forward for the rest of us to come back and feel normal and do the right things. But, as far as the cash games right now, you're seeing a lot of the cash rooms opening up. Some are opening, 9-handed without any plexiglass. Some are opening 6-handed with plexiglass. Some are 6-handed, no plexiglass. Some are, with masks mandatory. Some are, not mask mandatory. Some are using hand sanitizer, at the door, temperature checks, things like that. I really feel like, a lot of those things that they're doing are great, and a lot of them are great for optics. But, it's really unclear as of right now what's going to be the best path for us to take. I'm a strong proponent of wearing masks. I think they actually do a very good job at stopping these, the virus. But again, it's yet to be determined. I'm not a doctor. I can't really make decisions for casinos, but I think the casinos are doing a lot of the steps that even other things like, stores aren't doing, that are making it safer for people to go out and play. So I'm hoping in the long run that works. I'm hoping that they're making good decisions when they do that. And, again, I think that things like masks and temperature checks and, the sanitation that they're taking now that was never done before in poker is a good step forward to us getting to the next step of getting poker back and then getting tournaments back as well.
How do you feel about the concept of playing on a table with the plexiglass between players?
I don't love it. I think poker is a social game, as you know, and poker's meant to be fun. And I think it probably takes some of the fun out of it. But again, I also think that, they're the ones that are leading the charge of getting poker back out. So if they feel and their, city and their, state government feels that, that's the safest way for that to happen, then, of course I support it. My good friends down in Florida at Seminole Hard Rock are open six-handed in the plexiglass, and they've been very busy. So, if it's something that's working and, there's not another outbreak, because of it, I am in strong support of that. So I'm hoping for the best, and we'll see what happens, but I don't really know exactly how it's going to turn out, but we could just, hope that everything's going to turn out okay.
I've seen as well that you're also, trying to consult with not just other poker room operators from the United States, but also around the world. Have you looked at other places around the world? Say, for example, Taiwan. They're, of course, amongst one of the first mover countries that have really started to recover from the COVID-19 outbreak. I know that they're really starting to ramp up their poker room operations as well. Is there anything else that you perhaps might be wanting to consider for the future, not just have in place now as we get through this outbreak, but perhaps permanently?
Yeah, I really feel like we're going to be learning. This is a learning process for everybody. I really hope that people see that how important it is that you do take proper steps when you cough, when you sneeze. People don't know how to sneeze. They sneeze into their hands and they cough into their hands. And I think this is something that, we're going to be all better for at some point in our life. And, hopefully, people that leave the bathroom will now wash their hands 100% of the time. And, that people will be a little more respectful, and that, poker rooms will take these precautions of making sure things are clean, like the cards and the chips and the table and the seats and everything when players leave. So I do think that a lot of these things are going to end up being net positive. So, I'm excited for the future of poker. I really believe we're going to come back strong. And, with everybody coming back to online poker, we may be stronger than we ever have been. So, that's my hope. I really feel like, our community is a strong one. I think we've been tough over the years, and, we've put up with a lot. And so I think that, again, I hope we come back stronger than ever.
Matt, let's tell a few stories. Let's go back to your WSOP days. You mentioned before that you basically walked into the WSOP looking to try and standardize some tournament directors rules, and by the next year you were TD at the WSOP. Tell me about that experience of taking on that pretty massive role that he's running.
Yeah,
the WSOP.
I mean, it's interesting, that the people don't even know that back in 2001 and 2002, the World Series really could have folded. It could have been non-existent anymore. There was a lot of talk of the new owners of Binion's running into financial problems and selling the casino, and would the new owner even be interested in running the World Series of Poker? So that was all going on during my time there, from 2001 or 2002, 2003 to 2004. The people that were working on the floor in 2001 didn't even really get paid till much later. So a lot of people said, why would you take this job as the TD of the World Series of Poker? And I've always said in my career, if I didn't take that job, it would have made sense for me to take it for free. So not only, was it a great experience, and, I knew that it would really build and catapult my career by doing that, but I met my wife there too. So that's another good thing that came up.
So definitely
yeah,
worth
I
it.
met my wife at Binion's Horseshoe. So that was kind of the highlight of me taking that job at the World Series of Poker. But she's, yeah, she's been major influence in my life. So I'm happy that I was able to land her, I should say. But also, yeah, that was a big part of my start at the World Series of Poker. But in 2002, it was really a lot of turmoil. We didn't know if the numbers were going to go up or go down on the main event. And, it had grown every year to that point. So nobody really knew, And so when we got down to the end of the series and we ended up with 639 for the main event in 2002, we were excited because it was a big jump. And, the rumors and, WPT had just started and, online poker had just started heating up. So in 2003, we had no idea what to expect. And we didn't know it was going to grow and have this big boom. We were just running it for the same 300 people, it seemed like, every event. And so when the main event again came around in 2003 and 839 showed up with some support from online poker rooms, we could really kind of see that it was going to boom and going to explode.
And of course, 2003, the famous Chris Moneymaker final table and the Moneymaker effect they talk. I mean, I think the next year there were, a couple of thousand in the main event.
Yeah.
But obviously you oversaw. That's amazing jump, isn't it?
Yes.
But what are your memories of that final table and even the last couple of tables? There's a famous hand against Phil Ivey, of course. But what are your memory from that final table when you were overseeing that?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big time where Doyle wasn't playing at the World Series. He had problems with, some conflicts with the owners and wasn't going to play the World Series. So in 2003, he came in and played the World Series. So that was kind of the big memory, is that everybody was there. And when he busted out, there was a big round of applause. And, it was kind of like the poker royalty was in the room all the time there during that 2003 series. And so when Moneymaker broke out and beat Sammy Farha heads up, it was kind of like the icing on the cake for what was an amazing year at the World Series of Poker, and kind of, like I said, the forefront of what we saw to be the big explosion and, what we call the Moneymaker effect now, all spurred out of that 2003 World Series of Poker. So yeah, it was a crazy time. It was also, we never really knew what to expect. The dealers, were they going to stay or were they going to go? They were in contract squabbles as well. So we were very fortunate to actually get the dealers to even deal that year. So it was a crazy time to be at the World Series of Poker, that's for sure.
Well, of course, we had the secondary boom, as it were, the Great Australian boom in 2005 after Joe won the World Series. And that's also led to you coming down under to consult at the Aussie Millions. Can you tell us more about your experiences here in Australia and how that differs between here in the United States?
Well, I loved it. And, the Aussie Millions, I'm sure, is a big part of your guys' life. But, how they go to six-handed later in the tournament, that was my idea. So that was kind of, I was there at the beginning of this. I know that the Aussie Millions had happened a couple of years before, but I was kind of there with Fox Sports Net when we were doing it, and then, ended up getting some online sponsorship as well. But yeah, it was, my time there, I'll never forget it. It was, again, some of the nicest people I ever met. I loved Australian poker. I'm still very good friends with, Angelica Hale, who's my boss at the World Poker Tour, Lynn Gilmartin, and I have become very close since then. But, some of the people, Jane McKenzie and Jim Preston, all those people have become lifelong friends out of my short times that I was there at the Aussie Millions in 2000, I think it was 5, 6, and 7. I was there, but yeah, I really, really enjoyed my time there. Obviously, it was a world-class event and still is today, and probably, considered one of the, 4 or 5 major tournaments that is must play every year. So, I really hope everything clears up so we can get back down to Aussie Millions next year. I'd love to come back. I haven't been able to come for years because of the LA Poker Classic, but I'd love to get back out there at some point, and hopefully in the few coming years, I'll be able to be back down there.
One thing the WPT has done, obviously, last year is come down for the first Australian event, first full Australian event anyway, late last year, which was a huge success, Matt. So I'm sure it's, and the WPT.
Yeah, I didn't get the invite for that one. I wish I would have been there. Ange and Lynn were there, but Lynn was inducted into the Australian Hall of Fame down there at that time. So yeah, I saw the pictures. Lynn is a Instagram legend, so as they say. But yeah, so I really missed being down there, and it looked like a great event. I mean, just looked like they pulled out all the stops for that event, and a lot of entertainment, and everybody seemed to have a great time. So hopefully we can get back there as soon as possible. The WPT obviously loves being down there. We have a big tie to it, with a lot of our employees being Australian as well. So it's one of those things we look forward to and hope to make sure we can do that next year.
All right, Matt. Well, I think we might wrap it up. But, mate, great. Thanks for joining us today. It's pleasure as always, and fascinating to hear the old stories and the insights. So, and Landon as well, as always, great to see you today, and we'll see everybody next time.
And then the few coming years, I'll be able to be back down there and enjoy my French fries with sour cream. Is that what you guys eat?
French?
Oh, I certainly don't.
No,
Absolutely not.
French fries with sour cream.
Chips with sour cream. I remember that.
Wait, no, you're talking about potato wedges. There,
yes, wedges and sour cream.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wedges and sour cream with the chili sauce. There you go.
Yes,
Yeah, sweet chili sauce. Yeah, yeah. I'll stick with my ketchup, I think.
I never forgot it. It was pretty amazing.